the Spot Track Podcast, talking sports contracts, the salary cap, and business of sports.
Today's edition of the Spot Track Podcast is presented by Bettor Edge. You know it by now. Visit bettoredge.com, the social betting marketplace from over 45 states now, including a brand new iOS app to make everything nice and tight and easy. It's a safe, reliable, lightning quick payout system. No vagues. You create the prices. You create the bets. Go head to head or put it out for a big competition like we've done here at Spot Track for the last few weeks. Visit bettoredge.com. Use code SPOTTRAC, SPOTRAC, at sign up and get $20 on the house today. That's bettoredge.com. My name is Mike Ginnitti. It's Tuesday, March 11th. Free agency is behind us. Free agency is here. And we detailed some of that yesterday. And then, the wheels broke again. The dam broke again, let's say. Because I believe 30 of the top 50 are pretty much on the books at this point. Subject to change, nothing officially official, but for the most part, we've got $2.3 billion of total value free agency on the books. And if I just quickly click over to the extensions, around $1 billion or so there as well, thanks to Josh Allen's $350 million total value with the Bills that we discussed yesterday. Not a ton of huge surprises. I mean, the Patriots came into this thing with house money and they're spending it. Okay. Certainly we don't know exactly the cap impact, but a couple things with that before we dive into some of these names. Generally speaking, new contract, low cap hit. So don't get overly concerned with how are we going to squeeze this in or where's this going? Because as I think I said yesterday, even the contracts that we have on the books right now that we've gotten initial details for, initial breakdown schemas for, are subject, maybe even likely to change in a lot of cases. Void years are added, bonuses, even workout or per game active bonuses that are guaranteed are converted to signing bonuses. So numbers are going to move a little bit here. All right. Especially this first year salary cap as new information becomes available, new players become available. Okay. We're still getting releases and that's going to continue all the way through, obviously, until September. So a name pops on the wire and the Detroit Lions decide, hey, that's a name for us. They may need to manipulate Marcus Davenport's new contract a little bit to squeeze it in, come April 1st. All those kind of things happen a lot. Initial reports get changed, A, because they get reported wrong, B, because things have to change from a team perspective. And generally speaking, those changes are allowable, already baked into the contract's cake. So teams can manipulate that thing as much as possible, which is a smooth transition into the second part of this conversation and a post I made this morning on socials, because it's also the time of year for the casual fans that come out against the salary cap. It's not real. It's complete BS. It can always be manipulated. Why do we even follow it? It doesn't matter. Do teams even care? And I'm going to give you the most honest answer I can give you without, I'm not pushing back on anybody that thinks that, because I understand. You see a number one morning and you wake up and it's a completely different number and we haven't done anything, right? This is all behind the scenes accounting tricks, a la the Los Angeles Dodgers offseason for the past few years and their deferred payment tricks. It's not a trick. It's just an accounting procedure, right? It's just money here goes money there. And instead of it all being today, let's make it a little bit today and a lot more tomorrow. I know you know the details. I know you know how this stuff works now because, this stuff has been public entity now for years and years and years, and we say it week to week. The easiest answer I can give with this is the NFL has a hard cap. It is $279.2 million. However, if you rolled over money from last year, your adjusted cap as a team can be higher. Okay. And in almost every case, I believe actually in everybody's case this year, they have more than 279 as their hard cap. So I'm quickly just going to the New England Patriots for justification. They rolled over almost $35 million last year. So their adjusted salary cap as a team in 2025 is $314 million. That's their ceiling. That's subject to change as well, because we'll have some late adjustments come in from the league. That's bonuses that need to get paid out, some revenue adjustments and revenue sharing adjustments that we don't get privy to, but certainly we update as soon as we see it. But even the 279.2 is a moving target, because team by team, you're able to manipulate that based on last year's rollover. It's a hard line. If you're over it at 4 p.m. Eastern any day from now and through the season, there are ramifications. Okay. Contracts can get voided, draft picks can get forfeited, and certainly fines can get handed out. All that exists, and it's happened sparingly at times. With that said, and again, I'm trying to be fair here. I'm trying to see it from all angles. Of course, it has to be considered a soft cap because of the rules that exist. It's a hard cap, and there are rules if you go over it. You are not allowed to go over it, as in the NBA or in Major League Baseball, where their thresholds, you're allowed to exceed them, but there will be taxable penalties. Okay? Not illegal fines, not loss of draft picks, just taxable penalties. Now, the NBA has recently upped the ante on the discipline. Okay? Makes it harder to sign people, makes it harder to trade people. So it's getting a little bit closer to a hard cap, a little bit closer in the NBA. But the NFL is rigid. Okay? Whatever your threshold is for that year, if you're over it at 4 p.m. Eastern on any given day throughout the league year, there can be ramifications handed down. Okay. Obviously, with conversions, and maybe more importantly, with extensions. Okay, something I see a lot of this time of year. Okay, well, so-and-so's extension, Josh Allen, for instance, he had 4 years left on his book, so his extension doesn't kick in until 2030. That's not how it works in the NFL. I realize that's a hockey thing. That's a basketball thing. To some degree, that's a baseball thing. All right? You honor the current contract, and then you start with the extension whenever that becomes available, and those are two separate accounting entities. This is maybe the most difficult part about the NFL money, is that everything comes together as one. All right. So a player in his rookie contract, J.C. Horn, all right, just signed the monster contract with the Carolina Panthers. J.C. Horn. I think they put him on a 4 for 100. All right. He had 1 for 12.5 remaining on his rookie contract. Okay. The reason it's a 4 for 100 extension is because they are tacking that on now to this $12.5 million that remained. So in essence, it's a $112.5 million deal over 5 years. And it's going to look like a 5-year contract on SpotTrack and other various avenues, including the league themselves. Okay. So we meld what currently exists with anything new together as one contract. And the salary cap ramifications then are combined and often improved. So again, we don't have Josh Allen's extension, but I can guarantee you that when we do have the breakdown, despite the fact that it's $250 million guaranteed, that it was a rip it up and start it over, it's going to be a lower cap hit than the 44 and change that the Bills currently have on the books right now, because everything comes together at once. Okay. So J.C. Horn has a $12.5 million salary right now. That was his option. That's still the placeholder we have for him. But within the next 24 hours, when his details are announced, I would assume it's going to be a $1.2 million salary-ish, 1.1-ish, and a $40 million signing bonus, right? Which, if you do the quick math divided by 5, could equal a $9 million cap hit for Carolina in 2025. So $3.5 million saved on the cap, despite the fact that he just got a 4-year, $100 million extension tacked on to what he already had. That's why things are so confusing. It's not like any other league. If this was a hockey extension for Connor McDavid, and they were putting him on 4 for, 60 million in Edmonton, but he had 2 years left on his current contract, we wouldn't even be talking about the 4 for 60 until 2027. It has absolutely no impact on the Edmonton Oilers' financial situation for the next 24 months. None. And it's just not the case in the NFL. The second something happens, a conversion, an extension, a trade, a release, an incentive, okay? The second something happens, the cap changes, and in some cases, the cash changes. So this is why this is a full-time job for me, okay? All of this. Because every morning, a dozen things change, all right? And specifically this week, 4 dozen things change. And while I'm talking to you right now, there are dozens of things changing behind the scenes that I'm ignoring that I'll get to as soon as I get off this thing. But that's the deal, okay? It always matters. It's always changing. And it's not just the BS maneuver that I know a lot of you are sick of, which is the Saints have taken $38 million of Derek Carr's compensation, converted it to a signing bonus, spread it out over the next 5 years, lowered his cap hit by $30 million, and they're cap compliant. I get it. It sounds fake. It sounds dumb. It sounds like it's just a maneuver to manipulate the salary cap. And it is, but it's a legal one. Okay. And it's an unbelievably common one that 28 out of 32 teams use at least a half dozen times a year. Okay. And almost every contender, I can tell you that, almost every contender, with the exception of Green Bay, is going to be doing this feverishly over the next 2 weeks. There are certain teams that don't do it. There are certain teams that structure their guarantees so that they don't have to do it. And they just get players and agents to buy in. Why don't more teams do that? It's a good question. Because it's hard, I would guess is the answer. It's really hard to stand pat with that, rigid structure when there's a 10% increase on the salary cap every year and agents and players are sitting there knowing all of the numbers. But they get it done. Okay. Then you got teams like Tampa and teams like Chicago, who are going to be aggressive, and obviously Philadelphia and New Orleans, like we've talked about here. So I'm not trying to I'm not trying to attack anybody for thinking that this is all a big hoax. Okay. Cause I posted this also this morning, last point. Here's the other side of the equation that you have to keep in mind. While they're doing all this cap manipulation, cap conversion work via, restructure or extension, they're also telling players to their face, we can't afford to keep you on the salary cap this year. You are a cap casualty, Cooper Kupp. You are a cap casualty, name your person. Okay? Dozens of players every February. And it's not just media driven. Okay? This is the excuse that's being given out from the team. And it's valid in a lot of cases. Most of the time, it's more of a football decision than a business decision. But that is the frame. Cap casualty. So you can't have it that this thing is just do whatever you want. Okay, there's always cap in the banana stand. You can't make that stance, but then also agree that cap casualties are a thing. Okay, it's either none of this is actually real, which maybe some of you out there still believe, or it's real, but it's extremely fluid. And I think the smart teams are balancing a good, strong, standing approach that doesn't have to move too much with, all right, every now and then we can push some things down the line because Josh Allen's never leaving the city of Buffalo, right? Just as an example, right? Patrick Mahomes is never leaving the city of Kansas City. So if we got to convert his roster bonuses every year, they won't, but they could, they will, because they're pretty comfortable with kicking that can down the road, right? Balance. And then there's some teams like Philly and New Orleans and a few others that will continue to use every void year available to them, that will push every bonus out 5 years. Every salary will become a bonus that it's pushed out 5 years, and they will simply worry about it when they have to worry about it, which is when we're not a good team, sort of like what New Orleans is going through, which is why I referenced the tweet that I did this morning around the Saints. Okay. This point as a whole, all of it's true. It can move at every hour, let alone every day, let alone every week, let alone every offseason. Okay. The cap will move up and down, left and right. However, you still have to take it on. Okay? It will come to get you. And for the Saints, I think it's been the best example that we've had in a long time. There's no world where the Saints want Derek Carr to be their starting quarterback this year. I don't think they're being bashful about that. And yet, they fully guaranteed his salary this year, $40 million cash, and they converted almost all of it into signing bonus. And the only reason they did that is because they were minus 30 about 4 days ago. And the rest of the roster, they could nickel and dime it a little bit. They freed up about 11 and a half this morning with a couple of linemen. But they weren't going to get 50 freed up unless they maneuvered Derek Carr's salary. So kicking it down the line, the dead cap that was sitting on Derek Carr's contract this year forced their hand. It forced them to say, all right, we can't even really trade him, because trading him at any point in time over the next couple of weeks here is going to make this situation even worse. It's a negative to this negative 30. All right. It forced their hand. So it will come and bite them at times. But as many of you who responded, I think appropriately on the socials this morning said, you can kick the can down the road, but it also becomes a better value for you to do it because the cap is rising 10%. Everything's worth more. You know, there's a reason that we buy a $500,000 house and only pay $15,000 of it up front, $20,000 of it up front. There's a reason, because our money should be worth more across the next 30 years. Same with a car. There's a reason that we do this. It's not just because we don't have the money. It should actually work out in our favor to do it that way. And a lot of GMs and front offices believe this now. Right? Certainly that's what the Dodgers believe. Okay. As they put $680 million of Ohtani's money on 4.5% interest and allow the $400 million to just mature into that. Okay. That's what they've done. They've taken essentially $400 million, put it into an escrow account with 4.5 interest, and have budgeted out a situation where it will grow to the $680 million that they owe him. That's what they're banking on. To some degree, that's what these conversions do. Okay. Instead of $40 million today for Derek Carr, from a cap perspective, by the time we have to eat this thing, and I assume it'll be next offseason, the salary cap should be about $306 million next year. It's a lot better situation than 279. Okay. It just is. They know it. Every team knows it. And I think a lot more teams will start to become more aggressive in this regard. More, I know. If you're sick of it now, look out. But I think it's just going to get more and more because the NFL and their revenue and their salary cap situation is giving them the room to do that. Now, it should equal more money for players, bigger contracts for players. And I think to some degree that's being reflected in this free agency a little bit here. Before we get to the numbers, I promised you a little tidbit that happened yesterday that does happen often in the minutia. Sometimes this time of year, sometimes later down the road with some of the draft contracts. But this one was pretty fun. So, you know, the rumors are going to fly. It's pre-agency, it's moratorium period. And this one was surrounding Samaje Perine, the versatile running back who had a cup of coffee with Kansas City last year, made some impact down the line in the playoffs for them. But I think it was like 290 snaps total in 2024. So, you know, not exactly a high caliber player right now in the league. The rumor was that he signed a 3-year, $22 million contract with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that included $12 million guaranteed. Now, there's a bunch wrong with this. Okay. Starting with the fact that $22 million total value for any running back this offseason, is going to be a hard get. All right. And especially now knowing that Najee Harris was a 1 for 9.5. Perine getting this after being a minimum salary player last year is absurd. So obviously there were red flags immediately. Tampa Bay being the ones to sign any running back, let alone this running back, to that contract, despite having Rashad White and Bucky Irving, maybe the breakout player of the year, Made absolutely no sense. So it was 3 strikes and I should have been out. Except I went to confirm this thing with some of the league data that I'm able to see every now and then. And there was a Samaje Perine 3-year, $22 million contract with the Buccaneers, broken down year to year with salary information. So I just started to say, okay, this is going to be the wow contract. This is going to be the one that, to some degree, Christian Kirk's $18 million free agent contract 3 years ago, that just made everybody go, holy cow, NFL money is crazy. Well, it was crazy and it was fake. And the Tampa Bay front office came out on socials immediately and said, this ain't happening. This is not real. Here's what happened. Okay. The league processed a contract as Perine. It was supposed to be Ben Bretterson, the guard, very worthy of a 3 for 22 with 12.5 guaranteed, which is what it ended up being. That has been resolved in their system. That's certainly been resolved in our system. I think it's been flushed out in terms of the socials, but that one got farther than I think it ever should have. It went from a couple of knuckleheads tweeting it, and it started to make the rounds to an actual processed, broken down contract that was just simply misnamed with a team that doesn't need a running back. So I'll take an me on that one for, I guess, believing what I was looking at. And I should have gone with my gut, which is Samaje Perine is a $4 million player. I think he signed a 2 for 3.6 with the Cincinnati Bengals, who for sure could use another versatile running back, especially one that costs $1.8 million a year, which is exactly what Perine ends up actually being in the 2025 season. So some of the names, Milton Williams. Let's talk Patriots. I mean, there's a lot to get to here, and we'll get to a lot more of it once things are finalized and we have full breakdowns of guarantees and stuff like that. I'm not going to give you the laundry list just yet. We're just going to talk a couple of names to get out of here so I can get back to work on this data. But Milton Williams right now is your leader in the clubhouse with a 4-year, $104 million free agent contract in New England. It's 26 a year. I think we had him in the low 20s. I don't have the market value system in front of me right now, but I'm pretty positive he was a 22, 23, along with Josh Sweat. They were both similarly priced, and Milton Williams just blew this thing out of the water. It sounds like Carolina had him locked up on a really good guarantee, and then the Patriots just went to another stratosphere with this contract, which is what they had to do. Every single contract I believe that New England signed yesterday is markedly more than it probably should be. And I firmly believe that. And I believe that that's exactly the situation that they should be in as a franchise that has been sort of middling now for a while. And I firmly believe that they should be doing what they're doing. I really do. Now, they didn't address the offensive line enough. They certainly haven't touched the weapons yet, but there's a draft coming. All right. And there's a second wave of free agency coming. There's time. Now, I'm a little concerned that they didn't start with the offensive line because obviously protecting Drake May and allowing his development should be priority number one, even more so than finding him weapons and stuff like that. But this Williams get is going to fix a lot of problems. There's no question about it. This is an up and comer. He's never really been a full-time player. So $63 million guaranteed over the next 2.5 seasons for a first-time starter, essentially, is wild. But these are the swings that teams like New England and Tennessee and the list have to take. And that's the biggest swing we have right now. Followed up, of course, by Sam Darnold, which, if you've been following this stuff for the last 72 hours or so, this is exactly what we thought it was going to be. You know what I mean? It's a little bit less, financially speaking, than I thought Darnold should have garnered, even with his disastrous finish to the finish line there. But 3 for 105, which is $33.5 million per year. And it appears as though $55 million of that is fully guaranteed. We'll have to wait and see if that gets broken up at all in terms of guaranteed at signing. But I think there's about $10 million of incentives as well. So this thing can get close to 35 a year, which to me should have been the floor. All right. I'm surprised that despite the fact that there were at least 2 or 3 teams in on this, that it was able to stay around this Baker Mayfield contract, right? Which is 3 for 100. But it seems like the guarantee flow is better. And what else matters? All right. If Darnold is a 2 for 55, that's pretty good chump change for a guy that then will be 29 years old. And if he's still Sam Darnold from 2024 at any capacity, 29-year-old Sam Darnold with that production now over a 3-year span, having earned $65 million over those 3 years, can now cash in at $40 million plus per year pretty easily. Similar, oh, by the way, to what I think Geno Smith's about to do, right? He was showcase deal, mid-range deal for 2 years in Seattle. He was ready for that big jump up. Seattle wasn't ready to go with him. The Raiders will. So I expect the 2 for 90-ish to be his one last hurrah contract for Geno Smith. Sam Darnold, and by the way, Geno's 34. Sam Darnold could be ready for that big jump at age 29. So it's not the worst scenario for Sam Darnold by any regard. It's probably a little bit less than he was hoping for, especially, right, 3 months ago, where he was and essentially at the top of the league and MVP conversations, and so it's a bit down from that. But barring the fact that they can get him an offensive line that can keep him upright, this is not a bad offense to be in. It's just not. Well, I realize it's 2 wide receivers less right now, but there's time. There's time for weapons. Dan Moore, speaking of offensive lines, joins the Tennessee Titans on a monster 4 for 82, $50 million guaranteed. Kudos. If this is the only move Tennessee made this week, kudos. We have no idea what their quarterback situation is going to be. None. It could be Aaron Rodgers. It could be Kirk Cousins. It could be Mac Jones, right? It could be Mason Rudolph. I'm at a point where I don't even know or care. It could be Cam Ward, of course. I don't even know or care. Okay, because there are so many other holes, specifically on this O-line and specifically on their defensive line, especially now having moved down from Harold Landry. They got to start working from the inside out, right? They're a bad team that's got to start from square one, and square one is the trenches. So it's an overpay. I'm sure Pittsburgh would have loved to keep this guy, especially with their quarterback situation in a similar boat. But this is exactly what you do. You put your foot in the sand on an offensive lineman, on a tackle, and I expect them to have the gas pedal down all off season with this stuff, right? Let's go find a guard in the same breath, maybe in the draft. I think they've got a center worth a damn. So there's building block pieces at least starting to pile up here for Tennessee, which is the right way to go about this. And then whenever the moment strikes to find a weapon or two and a quarterback, they'll be better prepared for it, better prepared to handle it, and better prepared for it to succeed. So no issues there. Speaking of which, Aaron Banks, guard, leaves San Francisco for the Packers. This is one of those financial scenarios I was talking about in the open. Packers, outside of their quarterback contracts, right, Rodgers and Love, it's a year-to-year deal. All right, so Aaron Banks sounds crazy at 4 for 77, and I believe I saw that the 3-year cash flow on that is 63. Okay, which is outstanding, but it's just how the Packers do business. Because when we see the guts of this thing, there's going to be like a $25 million signing bonus, and that's going to be the only guarantee. That's it. That's how they do business. So it's going to look on Spot Track with that potential outline like a 1 for 25 or a 1 for 24, and then they can get out of it, right? And they have options from there, which is exactly how they do their business. And if they can get great players to agree to it, Josh Jacobs last year, Xavier McKinney last year, right? Aaron Banks this year, it's a really nice philosophy because they're constantly having options in their favor, team-friendly decisions. To counter that, to draw people in the door and keep them there, they use aggressive cash flows. That's why if you search for Aaron Banks' contract anywhere on the socials, you will see 4 for 77 and you will see a $63 million 3-year cash flow, but you will not see anything about guaranteed money. Okay. Because it's not a marketable number. And in fact, it's a negatively marketed number. They don't want to go out there and have this look like a terrible contract because of the way the Packers do business. Pittsburgh's the same way. There's a lot of teams like this now. It's becoming kind of a thing. So in no way is this a bad contract. I mean, unless the guy can't play football. And anytime you can keep Jordan Love upright, great. I think they're going to have to move some pieces around, make Elgin Jenkins a center. They've got a plan in place clearly because this is a blockbuster free agent contract, but it comes with an asterisk. Okay. So when you see the guarantees in the 20s, this is why. This is just what the Packers do. It has nothing against Aaron Banks. It is nothing against their how they feel about him, right? They want him for 4 years. But if the wheels fall off after 2, they'll be in position to move on because of the way they do their contracts. Final one, Josh Sweat. 4 years, $76.1 million, 41 of that guaranteed with the Cardinals, who I knew were in for an edge rusher. This was actually my bold prediction, Myles Garrett destination. Arizona is a nice player. Okay. I had him earmarked for about $22 million a year, Josh Sweat. So to come in under 20 a year on the base value, certainly you can get there with some incentives. And if this is just a 2 for 41, which is a little bit closer to that 22, obviously, if it's a 2 for 41 practicality, it's a nice get for a team that needs to start to move a little bit, build a little momentum right now. And the defensive side of the ball is where they need to focus that for sure. Because Kyler's been good. They've got a couple of offensive weapons now. James Conner's been extendable, right? That good. There's some offensive line pieces that have worked out. Now, if they can hit on something like this, it's a big step forward in 2025 for this Cardinals team. So, look, positionally, other than that, the cornerback stuff is exactly where I thought it was going to be. Carlton Davis, Javarius Ward, Byron Murphy cashed. All right. Murphy got the 22 I thought he was going to get. It's just, if you can play, if you've got pedigree and you've got production on the books, regardless of injury history, regardless of, this player can't shut players down like Stingley Jr. and Sauce Gardner do, even though the advanced metrics say that none of that matters. Because here's the thing. Cam Bynum's a $22 million cornerback. J.C. Horn's a $25 million quarterback. This is the young market. This is the first round pick cornerback market growing up. And we're going to have $26 and $27 million with Stingley Jr. and McDuffie and Sauce Gardner here in a moment. It's coming. But the players they're guarding, the players they're being asked to shut down are going to be making $40 million by the end of this conversation. Because we're already at 35, right? With the Justin Jeffersons of the world. And Chase now with this new cap and where everything else is headed, and certainly with Garrett's new contract off, non-quarterback contract, we're going to 40 mil. So the secondary is markedly behind the wide receiver market. And that used to be pretty flat. That used to be a one-to-one conversation on the books. And we're not even close. And we haven't been close. So anytime a cornerback gets paid more than you think, just know it's still not enough. Okay? It's not. Based on historical valuations, it's not enough. Now, I'm hoping that this next wave, because it's a good wave here, gets us into a situation that's closer to the 30s, because that'll be, at least from a top 5 perspective, a little bit more one-to-one. But that's a position that really shouldn't surprise you as much as it might right now. Outside of that, edge rushers getting 18 to 20. We've got a couple of older wide receivers getting paid. That's going to continue with Amari Cooper and DeAndre Hopkins over the next couple of days here. But for the most part, your wide receiver market's in the 10 to 15 range with your Darius Slaytons and your Josh Palmers, etc. So the running backs market hasn't been good. Najee was kind of the breadwinner. So that 1 for 9.5 might be as good as it gets on the running back market, but we'll see where a couple other things, Rico Dowdle and a few more line up here. And then that's it. I'm not going to crap on teams who haven't spent yet. There's certain teams that do not spend day one. Never do, never will. We'll see what happens today, day 2. But for all intents, this is a $2.3 billion start to free agency that, actually begins tomorrow, Wednesday, March 12th. And we're certainly off and running here with some blockbuster moves. For Scott Allen, my name is Mike Ginnitti. Thanks for listening to this edition of the Spot Track Podcast.